Welcome to this deep dive. Today, you're joining us as we explore a really fascinating and honestly incredibly wide-ranging conversation.
Yeah, quite the talk.
It features veteran stand-up comedian Rich Voss on the Joe Rogan Experience, specifically episode number 2305 that aired April 15th, 2025.
Right. Nearly 3 hours, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
So we've, taken a deep dive ourselves into a detailed summary of that whole discussion. And our goal here is really to pull out the most compelling insights, the memorable moments for you, covering, well, basically everything from Voss's personal journey, his take on the comedy world, to thoughts on current events.
Yeah, what immediately jumps out is just the sheer scope. It's not, just your standard comedian chat. It feels more like a seasoned performer reflecting on his life, his craft, the world, with remarkable candor.
Exactly. So maybe to start, let's paint a picture of Rich Voss himself. For those who might be maybe less familiar, he's a real fixture in stand-up, a writer, an actor.
7 comedy albums, too, right?
7 albums, yeah. And lots of people will know him as the co-host of those podcasts, My Wife Hates Me, and for worse, with his wife, Bonnie McFarlane.
Right, Bonnie.
And it sounds like family life is really, really important to him. He's a proud father, 3 daughters and a grandfather now, 3 grandkids, another on the way.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that established family life seems like, well, a backdrop to the often kind of unpredictable nature of a comedy career. And despite hitting some big milestones like that recent Amazon special, Rich Voss, Anonymous.
The one filmed at an NA convention.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty unusual venue. But even with that success, he sort of conveys this sense of something still missing. What do you make of that contrast?
That's a great point. You'd think, with that level of success, there'd be a feeling of just complete satisfaction. But this kind of lingering sense of unfulfillment, even after big achievements, it makes you wonder about the inherent nature of creative work, doesn't it?
Totally. Like a perpetual drive, maybe?
Yeah, maybe a restlessness that's just part of being a comedian. He even mentioned this quick flip of a car, a Lexus IS 350 he only kept for 7 months.
Oh, really? Huh.
It's a small detail, maybe, but it hints at a certain impulsiveness or perhaps that constant search for, I don't know, something new.
Could be.
But on the flip side, his admiration for his wife, Bonnie McFarlane, her success as a writer and comedian, that really shines through. He talks about their strong connection, personal and professional. He even compared themselves to other comedy power couples.
Oh, yeah. Like who?
Like Christina Pasitsky and Tom Segura, or Natasha Leggero and Moshe Kasher.
Ah, okay. Right?
It sounds like they really navigate the whole comedy world together as a team, bonding over what you jokingly called shared enemies.
That idea of shared enemies in comedy, that's fascinating. It speaks volumes about the pressures, the competitive side of it. Having a partner who just gets those specific challenges, offers support, that must be huge for sustaining a long career.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit to a much more personal and intense part of the conversation, Voss opens up about his sobriety journey. 39 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just remarkable.
39 years is incredible.
He talked about starting with marijuana at 15, then cocaine, late teens, and eventually crack and heroin from 25 to 28. It's a pretty stark progression.
Yeah.
And he makes this incredibly honest admission, saying he actually felt he functioned better on heroin than on freebase or cocaine.
Yeah.
What does a statement like that even tell us about addiction?
Wow. That level of raw honesty is, it's quite powerful. For the listener, it really highlights how addiction can just twist your perception, right? Creates this false sense of normalcy or even like you're doing better. It's a stark reminder, addiction isn't logical. It's this powerful compulsion that just warps reality.
Completely. He identifies a drug-fueled trip to Boston as the real turning point, the thing that finally pushed him towards rehab.
The bottom, essentially.
Yeah. He credits that decision with saving his life, which is, profoundly impactful to hear.
Absolutely.
Then, in a kind of unexpected turn, the conversation touches on his current gambling habits. Yeah, he mentioned winning 2 jackpots playing slots on his phone.
Yeah.
Just in the past year. What are your thoughts on that juxtaposition, sobriety and gambling?
Well, it really underscores that addiction can be a complex landscape. Even with long-term sobriety from substances, those addictive tendencies can sometimes, well, resurface in different forms.
Right. Cross-addiction, sometimes they call it.
Exactly. But the fact that he actively attends, 2, 3 recovery meetings each week, That suggests an ongoing awareness, an effort to manage those urges. It highlights that recovery is often, a continuous process, self-management, not just a one-time fix.
It definitely paints sobriety as an active, ongoing thing.
Okay.
Okay, let's switch gears again. Let's delve into his insights on the comedy world itself.
Okay.
He talks about navigating the often tricky dynamics of comedy clubs, earning respect from really diverse groups of comedians. For someone who's been in the game as long as he has, that says a lot about his adaptability, his resilience,
Right.
right?
Definitely. Staying power.
He even shared a memory of working with the legendary Bill Hicks.
Mm.
What does that association kind of signify within the comedy community?
Well, for anyone interested in comedy history, Bill Hicks, that name carries serious weight. He's remembered for being sharp, often confrontational, highly intelligent comedy. So if Way's working with him, it suggests maybe a shared understanding or dedication to that more thought-provoking style, earns respect.
Makes sense. He also recounted doing these apparently very lucrative prom shows back in the day at Dangerfields.
Prom shows. Really?
Yeah, said he could make thousands in a single night. It gives you a real snapshot of how this scene, maybe the whole entertainment industry, has changed over the years.
Oh, thousands for a prom show. Different times.
But it wasn't all big money gigs. He also expressed frustration about comedy pilots he worked on that never got picked up. That's got to sting.
Oh, absolutely. For anyone listening with creative dreams, that's a pretty universal experience, isn't it? That rejection. The entertainment industry, yeah, it looks glamorous, but it's full of stories like that. Talent, hard work doesn't always equal immediate success. His frustration with those pilots just highlights how competitive it is, how unpredictable. You need resilience.
We already mentioned his marriage with Bonnie as a personal anchor, but it's clearly also a huge source of support, a real creative partnership. That idea of bonding over comedy and those shared enemies, as he put it, seems powerful for them.
Yeah, that shared understanding again.
He also shared experiences on shows like Tough Crowd, Opie and Anthony, Kill Tony. Lots of appearances. But interestingly, even with all those years on stage, he admitted still getting performance anxiety, especially before taping specials.
That's really telling, isn't it, from someone that experienced? It just highlights the pressure of live performance, that deep desire to connect, to deliver, no matter how many times you've done it, humanizes the whole thing. Even the pros get nerves.
Yeah, good point. Now, the conversation did venture into some more potentially sensitive areas. Vos shared his perspectives on the Israel-Palestine conflict, referencing, a historical Jewish presence there.
Okay.
However, it's probably worth noting that his specific statement that Jews have been there since Jesus, that did draw some online discussion about, well, the precise historical accuracy.
Ah, okay. So some nuance needed there.
Right. Our summary indicates listeners brought up points about casualty stats, rejected peace deals, suggesting a more intricate history and politics. When we encounter these differing views online, what's a helpful way for us as listeners to process that?
Well, when you're dealing with topics with such long, complex histories like Israel-Palestine, it's just crucial to recognize there are often multiple narratives, multiple interpretations. Personal perspectives are valuable, sure, but engaging with a range of sources, understanding different historical viewpoints, that leads to a more, comprehensive understanding.
Yeah.
The online discussions you mentioned, highlighting casualties, peace deals, they likely reflect a desire for a broader acknowledgement of the human impact, the ongoing efforts for resolution.
Makes sense. He also discussed rising anti-Semitism after October 7th, 2023, and shared his perspective on college campus protests.
Okay, another heavy topic.
Yeah, at one point suggesting potential funding from Qatar, drawing comparisons to Vietnam War protests. Again, these are complex issues, lots of varied viewpoints.
Definitely.
He also reflected on pre-1979 Iran, recalling a time of greater social freedoms, apparently. And he critiqued UN voting patterns concerning Israel. When someone offers these kinds of broad comparisons, like Vietnam protests or pre-revolution Iran, what should we consider as listeners?
Well, when you hear comparisons across different times or places, it's helpful to consider both the potential similarities and the crucial differences.
Right.
Historical analogies can sometimes offer insights, yeah, but they can also really oversimplify things.
Yeah.
So for the listener, it's about engaging critically, asking, okay, what aspects are really parallel here? And what unique factors are at play in each situation?
He also questioned the impact of climate change protests. Things like highway blockages, incidents at like Porsche dealerships. It seems he holds a more skeptical view of those tactics.
Okay.
What might underlie that kind of skepticism towards certain forms of activism?
Well, often skepticism towards specific protest tactics can stem from, a variety of things. Some might question the effectiveness. Do actions that disrupt daily life or target certain businesses actually work? Or do they just alienate potential allies?
Right, the winning hearts and minds
Yeah,
argument.
exactly. Or wondering if there are more constructive ways to push for change. It's just a reminder there are really diverse opinions on the best way to advocate for things.
Interestingly, woven into this whole very wide-ranging conversation were some commercial mentions.
Ah, the sponsor plugs.
Yeah. He endorsed ExpressVPN for online privacy, discussed DraftKings Pick 6 for the basketball playoffs, mentioned it was available in Missouri and Texas. Just a reminder of how integrated that stuff is now.
Totally. It's just part of the media landscape now, something listeners are, aware of as they consume content.
Right. The conversation then shifted again to analyzing hostage situations, particularly hostage trades in Gaza. He used the example of, like, 4 hostages maybe being exchanged for 1,000 prisoners.
Mm-hmm. The common point of discussion.
And he drew a historical parallel to the Iranian hostage crisis under President Carter and how it resolved after Reagan's election.
Interesting comparison.
He also offered some critique of Trump's comments on Gaza, and he accused 60 Minutes of biased journalism.
Oh, really? Specifics?
Yeah, specifically mentioning a Leslie Stahl interview with hostages, and also edited segments involving Kamala Harris, suggesting, a potential shading of media narratives.
Okay.
When we hear these kinds of accusations about media bias, what's a good approach for us as informed listeners?
Yeah. Well, as a listener navigating today's, complex media world, it's always beneficial to seek out multiple sources, always, and critically evaluate the perspectives being presented. Recognize that different outlets might have their own editorial slants. That helps you form a more well-rounded view.
Look at the evidence.
Yeah, consider the evidence being presented. Are different angles being explored, or just one?
Changing direction again, Volz then focused on his own health and wellness, which was interesting. He talked about getting treatment for a torn rotator cuff, using stem cells and BPC 157.
Oh yeah, those are getting popular.
Apparently. He was back playing golf really quickly, which is, quite a recovery for a rotator cuff.
That's impressive.
This led to his goal of losing 20 pounds by June 30th of last year through a low-carb diet, plus plans for a blood panel, more stem cell treatment. He's clearly being proactive.
Taking charge, yeah.
What can we maybe learn from someone taking such an active role in their health like that?
Well, for the listener, Vosa's experience kind of highlights the growing interest in and maybe accessibility of these advanced medical treatments and just the potential for proactive health management overall. It underscores the idea that taking an active role, exploring options, setting health goals, it can lead to positive outcomes.
He also brought up concerns about PFAS chemicals, the forever chemicals
Yeah.
in Starbucks coffee cups, advocating for alternatives.
Huh. Didn't know about that specific concern.
And he shared a very personal story about an AIDS test mix-up back in the 80s or 90s,
Wow.
which he linked to his drug history and his perspective on the connection between AIDS, needle sharing, and heavy drug use back then. When someone shares something that personal, that sensitive, what's the significance for us?
When people share those really personal experiences, it can offer a powerful glimpse into their past, right? The challenges they face. For you, the listener, it can foster empathy, a deeper understanding of their life journey. In this case, his anecdote touches on a major public health crisis and the fear and uncertainty around it during that time.
Definitely. And on the topic of mental health, Vos was also quite open. Talked about past hospitalizations when he was 21, going to therapy at 40, taking medication for anxiety.
Good for him for being open.
Yeah. He even contrasted his own struggles with what he saw as overconfidence in others, using Will Smith at the Oscars as an example.
Ah, okay. That incident.
What's the impact, do you think, when public figures share their mental health experiences like that?
Oh, it can be incredibly impactful for listeners. It really helps to destigmatize these issues. It normalizes the conversation around mental well-being and maybe encourages others who are struggling to actually seek help, makes it less isolating.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving into his sort of economic and political views near the end, he offered a critique of taxing the rich, referencing Elon Musk's tax contributions,
A common debate point.
and pointing out global wealth stats, like how earning $34,000 a year puts you in the top 1% globally.
Provides perspective, yeah.
He also recounted a text debate he had with Bill Burr about pro-Palestinian views, but he emphasized their friendship remains strong despite disagreeing.
That's important, being able to disagree but stay friends.
It is. And he also criticized comedians who avoid taking political stances altogether. What are your thoughts on that? The role of comedians in political discourse.
Well, the role of comedians in addressing political or social issues, that's a long-standing discussion, isn't it? Some believe comedians have this unique platform to offer perspectives, challenge norms. Others might prefer comedy to just be entertainment and escape.
Right, different schools of thought.
Yeah. But the fact that Voss maintains friendships despite political differences, like with Bill Burr, that really underscores the importance of respectful dialogue, being able to separate personal relationships from political views.
Good point. Finally, he mentioned some upcoming events at the time of the recording anyway. A sold-out Patrice O'Neill benefit, I think, and scheduled performances at the Mothership in Austin, just highlighting he's still very active out there.
Yeah, these mentions of ongoing gigs, they serve as a good reminder of the continuous work, the engagement required to maintain a career like his. It doesn't stop.
So as you can clearly hear, our deep dive into this Rich Voss conversation with Joe Rogan, it really covered a remarkable amount of ground. Just wow.
A marathon session, for sure.
It's a raw, often unfiltered look at a huge range of topics,
Yeah.
from his deeply personal stuff, addiction, recovery, to his observations on the comedy scene and those perspectives on global events. There's certainly a lot there to chew on.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
We really hope this deep dive has given you a valuable snapshot of this extensive discussion, highlighting some of the key themes, the provocative points raised.
Yeah, hopefully a good overview.
What stands out most to you from all this? What aspects would you find most interesting to maybe explore further on your own time?
That's a good question for listeners to consider.
This conversation definitely leaves us with plenty to reflect on about personal journeys, the dynamics of entertainment, and just navigating the complex world around us.